In 2021, the FDA approved a drug that promised to change everything. It wasn't a diet. It wasn't a surgery. It was an injection, once a week. In 3 years, it became the most prescribed medication in the world. Celebrities used it. Doctors prescribed it. Pharmacies ran out of stock. The company behind the drug became the most valuable in Europe. And for millions of people, the drug worked. The numbers were real. The weight dropped. But there was a question almost no one was asking. Not in doctors' offices, not in advertisements, not in the headlines. What happens when you stop? The story begins in 1979, in Denmark. A researcher named Jens Juul Holst was studying how the intestine regulates appetite after a meal. He found a natural hormone, GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. The mechanism was elegant. You eat, your intestine releases GLP-1. Your brain receives the signal. Enough. I'm satisfied. Decades later, the industry learned to mimic that hormone with chemical precision. The result was semaglutide. In 2017, the FDA approved semaglutide as Ozempic for type 2 diabetes. But something unexpected happened in the clinical trials. The diabetic patients were losing a lot of weight, far more than any other drug ever tested. Novo Nordisk saw the opportunity. In 2021, they launched Wegovy, the same semaglutide, now approved specifically for obesity. Same molecule, new packaging, new market. In 2023, Ozempic and Wegovy generated $18.4 billion in sales. In 2024, $26 billion. By 2030, projections estimate $470 billion in cumulative revenue. To put that in perspective, semaglutide, in its first 10 years on the market, is set to generate nearly double the revenue of the iPhone in its first 10 years. The iPhone, double. Novo Nordisk became the most valuable company in Europe. Denmark's GDP grew 2.9% in 2024, almost entirely because of the company's profits. The country's central bank estimated that without semaglutide exports, Denmark would not have grown at all in 2023. And to make sure that growth continued, the company went to Congress. In 2023, Novo Nordisk hired 77 lobbyists in the United States. 54 of them were former federal government employees. Lobbying spent over $5 million in 12 months. The perfect business model. A drug that costs between $800 and $1,000 a month that needs to be used indefinitely for a chronic condition. But let's be honest about something before we go further. Ozempic works. It's not a placebo. It's not marketing. The studies are real and the results are impressive. The Step 1 trial, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, followed 1,961 adults with obesity for 68 weeks. The average weight loss was 15.2% of body weight. To compare, the best obesity medications available before that study achieved 5% to 8%. The jump was real and meaningful. Participants saw drops in blood pressure, improved blood sugar, reduced cardiovascular risk. The Mounjaro trials, Eli Lilly's direct competitor, went even further. An average of 21% body weight lost, in some subgroups up to 26%. These numbers are so strong they changed the conversation about obesity in medicine. For the first time, there was a pharmacological tool that came close to the effectiveness of bariatric surgery. And this is exactly where the problem begins. Not with what the drug does, but with what happens to the weight that was lost. Because there are two types of weight in your body, and Ozempic doesn't distinguish between them. When you lose weight, the ideal is that most of it comes from fat. But the body doesn't work that way easily, especially with rapid loss, and semaglutide causes rapid loss. A 2024 analysis reviewing body composition data from the STEP trial itself reached a number that most doctors never mention during your appointment: 45.5%. Of every 10 pounds lost, almost 5 were not fat. They were muscle, intracellular water, metabolically active tissue. Other studies varied. Some found 25%. Others, 60%. The range is wide. It depends on age, protein intake, and exercise level. But the central point remains. A significant fraction of what the scale shows as success is in fact the loss of something you needed to keep. To understand what happens when someone stops Ozempic, you need to understand how the brain controls weight. And the answer is uncomfortable for anyone who believes obesity is simply a lack of willpower. Deep in your brain, in a structure called the hypothalamus, there is something researchers call a set point, a point of equilibrium, a preferred weight, the weight your body tries to maintain, regardless of what you do. Two hormones are the main actors in this system. Leptin, produced by fat cells, signals the brain, I'm full, there's enough energy. Ghrelin, produced by the stomach, signals, I'm hungry, I need to eat. When you lose weight, fat cells shrink, leptin drops, ghrelin rises. Your brain interprets this as an emergency. This mechanism is not a character flaw, it's evolutionary survival. For 99% of human history, having fat reserves meant surviving the winter, the drought, the famine. Your body was programmed over thousands of years to defend that store. Conventional diets collide with this mechanism most of the time. What happens after a diet? Metabolism drops, hunger returns with force, the weight comes back. Studies show that 3 to 5 years after a successful diet, most people return to their starting weight. Some estimates suggest that only 1 to 3% of people who lose weight keep it off long term. GLP-1 solves part of that problem in an elegant way. Semaglutide mimics natural GLP-1, and GLP-1 is exactly one of the hormones that signals satiety to the hypothalamus. While you take the drug, the signal is there. The brain receives the message. There's food. I'm fine. Hunger stays controlled. The weight drops. But when you stop, the signal disappears, and the hypothalamus, which still has the old set point registered, because shifting it takes years, not months, begins sending the opposite signals. Ghrelin rises, leptin drops, hunger returns. And it returns with more force than before, because the weight is now below the set point. Now remember the 45% that wasn't fat. Muscle burns calories passively. It sustains your resting metabolism. When you lose it, your metabolism slows down, permanently, until the muscle is rebuilt. So when Ozempic stops, you have simultaneously increased hunger from the set point, a slower metabolism from the lost muscle, and a body biologically programmed to recover what it lost. In January 2026, the British Medical Journal published a meta-analysis reviewing 37 studies with 9,341 adults who had used GLP-1 medications to lose weight. The research question was direct. What happens to the weight when they stop? The answer was clear. On average, 0.4 kilograms regained per month after stopping the medication. For Semaglutide and Tirzepatide, the newest and most potent, the average was 0.8 kilograms per month. The projection returned to starting weight in approximately 18 months. And that's not all. The same study concluded that people who stopped GLP-1 medications regained weight 4 times faster than people who had lost the same weight through diet and exercise. 4 times faster. That's not a coincidence. It's exactly what the set point biology predicts. The body was kept below its preferred weight artificially. When the suppression ends, recovery accelerates. These studies are not secrets. They're published. They're accessible. Novo Nordisk knows them. Many are studies financed or co-financed by the company itself. What the company knew, therefore, was 1. The drug works while you use it. 2. When you stop, the weight comes back. 3. This creates a patient who needs the medication forever or faces weight regain. Now think about the business model. A drug that needs to be taken indefinitely, that costs between $800 and $1,000 a month. Approved to treat a chronic condition, obesity. This is not speculation. Novo Nordisk itself communicated to financial markets in its investor presentations that it expects most patients to need the medication for an indefinite period of time. It's the same business model as statins for cholesterol or blood pressure medications. You don't cure, you manage every month. Half of GLP-1 users in the United States stop within 12 months. The most common reason, cost. The second, side effects. The third, access and availability. This means a massive portion of people who start Ozempic are being exposed to the rebound effect not by choice, but by inability to keep paying. The drug that worked becomes a problem when access disappears. Now comes the part that matters.
Not because the problem disappears, it doesn't. But because ignoring what science already knows would be just as irresponsible as what we've been criticizing. If you use GLP-1 or considering it, the scientific literature points to 3 essential fronts. And they are not miracle supplements. They are work. The first, and most important, is protein. In July 2025, researchers from Harvard and Massachusetts General Hospital presented at the Endocrine Society's annual meeting a small but relevant study. They followed 40 people using semaglutide and found that those with higher protein intake preserved significantly more muscle mass throughout treatment. The current recommendation for GLP-1 users: between 1.2 and 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. For a 175-pound person, at least 95 grams of protein daily. With appetite suppressed by the medication, reaching that number through conventional food is difficult.